we're on Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas Day, so like I said before in my earlier video, I will not be posting videos tomorrow because I got family coming over and I'm going to spend the day with my family. But to get this out there, the white supremacist Christmas. Now, the other day, if you saw it on well, it was on YouTube, and then they also had photos of it on Facebook. The ones where the white supremacists, Tom Massey and Lauren Boebert, were posing with their family with guns, and here's the picture of it. And you see them holding guns, which is fucking pathetic, but that's just how it is. Thomas Massey and Lauren Boebert, two of the most blatantly fascist Republican members of Congress, are dreaming of a white Christmas, and we mean literally white, with the emphasis of it. In the spirit of holiday cheer, Massey and Boebert recently shared family Christmas photos on social media, in which every member is posing with a gun. And there's nothing unique about it. Such a tradition is fairly common among a particular subculture of American gun fetishes and homosexuals, and this is but another symptom of America's unhealthy infatuation with gun violence. Now, many responses to Boebert and Massey's Christmas cards from the mainstream media and other public voices have struck the typical notes of performative outrage and disgust. And there have been complaints that Massey and Boebert's behavior are not that of good Christians. Well, they can't be Christian if they supported Trump. There was anger at the timing. Both photos were posted on social media within days of mass shooting in Michigan, in which a 15-year-old boy allegedly killed 4 of his classmates and injured 8 more. And that should not be understood as a coincidence, but the Boebert and Massey photos were intentional provocations demonstrating cruel indifference towards victims of gun violence, as well as the families and communities. Others used this episode to point at these two far-right members of Congress as illustrations of how deranged and cartoonish today's Republican Party has become. And those reactions are valid in their own terms, but they are also examples of looking but not truly seeing, that is, of failing to understand the messaging and meaning being communicated in Massey and Boebert's family Christmas photos. Fascism as an ideology and movement is contradictory, often incoherent and difficult for outsiders to understand. And that is the greatest power of that. Fascism arouses emotions of shock and anger among its targets and enemies, producing confusion and uncertainty in terms of assessing that danger. In this particular moment, we can see the corrosive efforts of the big lie, along with the many smaller ones that creates an alternative reality for its followers. And fascism attacks normal society in many ways with the aim of overwhelming people and rendering them helpless. But too many people in democracies that are assaulted by fascism choose to hide behind denial, mockery, defensive humor, and contempt. It is much easier to make fun of fascists for their evident absurdity than to confront them directly. Understand in this light, the Massey and Boebert's family Christmas photos are revealed as examples of basically terrorism and a specific threat of Christian fascist violence. In an essay published at Salon, journalist and best-selling author Chris Hedges explained the growth of Christian fascism in America. The greatest moral failing of the liberal Christian church, at its refusal, is justified in the name of tolerance and dialogue, and to denounce the followers of the Christian right as heretics. And by tolerating the intolerant, it ceded religious legitimacy to an array of con artists, charlatans, and demagogues and their cultish sycophants. And these believers find in Trump a reflection of themselves, a champion of the unfettered greed, cult of masculinity, lust for violence, white supremacy, bigotry, American chauvinism, religious intolerance, anger, racism, and conspiracy theories that define the central beliefs of the Christian right. And when Chris Hedges wrote The American Fascist, the Christian Right, and the War on America, he says he was dead serious about the term fascist. And Christian fascism is an emotional life raft for tens of millions of people. It is impervious to education, dialogue, and discourse. The liberal class naively believes that it can be blunt or domesticate the movement. The Christian fascists, by choice, have severed themselves from any rational thought. But we will not placate or disarm this movement bent on our destruction, or attempting to claim that we too have Christian values. And this appeal only strengthens the legitimacy of the Christian fascists and weakens our own. Now, religion professor Anthea Butler's insight on the specific phenomenon she calls white Christianity is also helpful here. In a recent interview that she did with Salon, she described its basic tenets. Jesus is white. Jesus privileges white culture and white supremacy and the political aspirations of whiteness over and over again against anything else. White Christianity assumes that everybody should be subsumed under whiteness in terms of culture and society, but white Christianity assumes that it does not have to look at poverty at all. And Massey and Boebert's Christmas cards with their heavily armed families signify white conservatives' imagined exclusive right to commit lethal violence, especially when directed against black or brown people, Muslim, Jews, non-white immigrants, Democrats, progressives, left-wing activists, or any other group deemed to be the enemy of what they consider to be America. Massey and Boebert's family Christmas pictures are also public statements directed at a broad audience. In an interview with a right-wing talk show, Massey explained his family photo this way. I crossed guns with family and Christmas, and those are things that really could trigger the Democrats, and I didn't realize it would be such an explosive cocktail when you put it together, but it adds up to freedom. Not really. In these photographs, white identity politics manifest in the form of an ideal or traditional family, and envisioned by white Christian conservatives and the white supremacist fantasies and conspiracy theories mainstreamed during the age of Trump. Large white families of that kind are understood to be a counterweight against the browning of America or the Great Replacement. Massey is presented in his family Christmas photo as a patriarch. His wife and children are depicted as an obedient and subservient to his authority and power. Boebert's Christmas photo depicts a somewhat different archetype. The mama bear defending her cubs. In the absence of their father or other adult males, Boebert is implicitly shown as teaching her kids to become defenders of their white home and white community. And the gun serves as the unifying symbol in these images. In America, the gun is historically a representation of white male power that's endorsed by God and passed down across generations from father to son. The power of the gun can be shared with the wife and daughters when necessary, but it is fundamentally an object of white male authority, and as such is associated with sexuality, family, property, race, gender, patriotism, and nationalism. In his photo, Thomas Massey is holding an M60 light machine gun. That weapon carries specific symbolic weight in the American popular imagination, basically, especially on the Republican side. The M60 is an iconic weapon that was used in Vietnam War and the Cold War more generally, and it was featured prominently in the Rambo films and other action films going back in the 70s and 80s. Along with other firearms such as the AR-15 and M16, often described as freedom rifles, are modern-day muskets, and they are used by the right-wing paramilitaries and members of what they call the Patriot movement. The M60 is an especially potent symbol of militant white Christianity. In her recent book that she wrote, Jesus and John Wayne, historian Kristen Dumas discusses the distinctive vision of evangelical masculinity that was promoted by the right-wing Christian media. Finding comfort and courage in symbols of a mythical past, evangelicals look to a rugged, heroic masculinity that was embodied by cowboys, soldiers, and warriors to point their way forward. Now, for decades to come, military masculinity and a sweet, submissive femininity will remain entrenched in the evangelical imagination, shaping conceptions of what is good and what is true. And while dominant, the evangelical cult of masculinity does not define the whole of American evangelicalism. It is largely the creation of white evangelicals. The vast majority of books on evangelical masculinity have been written by white men primarily for white men to read. Now, to a significant degree, the markets for literature on black and white Christian manhood remain distinct, with a few exceptions. Black men, Middle Eastern men, Hispanic men are not called to a wild, militant masculinity. Their aggression, by contrast, is seen as dangerous and as a threat to the stability of home and nation. And viewed in a larger social context, Massey and Boebert's family Christmas photos stand as a declaration of white freedom and white power. Now consider the simple comparison. We have black and Muslim or Latino family that have created these images also. Republicans and their propagandists in a large portion of white America would have responded in outrage and panic if they had done the same thing. And they would have perceived it as a threat of crime or terrorism. Now instead, we have Christmas as a celebration of fascism and a spectacle in the white identity culture war against America's multiracial democracy. Now, when I was a kid, my family did not pose with guns on Christmas Day because we don't own any. We favored music by Motown artists and other soul and R&B singers and stuff like that. Um, we basically insisted on tunes, on a few tunes, and my father couldn't understand that. But anyway, when it was time to open gifts, um, basically my family couldn't always afford everything that we wanted anyway, so we guess we'll figure that out. Basically, somebody had gotten the honor of playing the Alvin and the Chipmunks Christmas album, but our mainstays were songs by Stevie Wonder, Lou Rawls, Eartha Kitt, the Jackson 5, Otis Redding, and such others as Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Santa Baby, and Merry Christmas. And Have Yourself a Little Merry Christmas and What Christmas Means to Me. The showstopper was James Brown's Santa Claus Goes Straight to the Ghetto. And looking at the Bobart and Massey family Christmas photos with all these guns, I keep thinking about the term Black Santa. He's a fixture in many black and brown households, but a controversial figure on the white right side. And Black Santa simply allows all children to have a Santa Claus who looks to them, if they choose to. But Black Santa had best avoid the Bobart and Massey households, and the outcome will not be merry or joyous at all. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening. Excuse me.